Hello beautiful people, this is Chris from TechSpert and I'm here with the fresh new Nokia 7.1 handset. A £300 smartphone, rocks an HDR screen and packs some pretty good specs as well for that asking price. Also got the slightly older Nokia 7 Plus, still a fantastic handset. It was a bit more expensive when it first launched, around $349, but you can get it for about the £300 price point now. And again, still some great specs as well. So I'm going to do a quick side-by-side, see which one might be best for you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ding that notifications bell for the latest and greatest mobile tech. Cheers. So first up, as you can see, Nokia has really streamlined that design for the Nokia 7.1. You now get much skinnier bezels to the sides and especially up top, of course. One of the sacrifices I've had to make is a bit of notch action in order to get that display pushing all the way up to that top edge. So if you don't like notches, well, you're probably going to want to stick with the Nokia 7 Plus instead with its nice flat top finish instead. But if you do clutch the two, the Nokia 7.1 is definitely the more comfortable of the pair. As you can see, it's a lot more compact. It's also got slightly more curved corners down here at the bottom as well, so it doesn't jut it into your palm the way that the Nokia 7 Plus does a bit. If we flip them both around, you'll see they sport a very different design on the back end as well. So the older Nokia 7 Plus sports an aluminium matte finish around the edges and the back here as well. So it's pretty good at hiding those sort of scuffs and smears and all the rest. You can pick it up in a few different hues. Obviously the black model with a nice bit of copper trim, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Even a few months on, still a really smart design. Love the fact that it's got this bit of trim around the camera chassis, around the fingerprint sensor. Just looks very smart indeed. As for the new Nokia 7.1, this sports, of course, the very popular glass finish instead. So it does still have a bit of aluminium banding around this edge. And as you can see there, a nice bit of shiny chamfering around the corners as well. Lovely stuff. But over there on the back, it is fully glass. You can again pick it up in a couple of different finishes, although they're basically dark blue or black, so there's not a massive amount of difference between them. It does scuff up a bit more, of course, than the Nokia 7 Plus, as you'd expect from a glass rear, though those darker finishes mean that you don't really tend to see the smudges and greasy prints unless it catches the light just so. You once again get a nice bit of trim around that camera chassis as well, not around the fingerprint sensor sadly. And while you get some basic splash proof in here on the Nokia 7.1, the Nokia 7 Plus is actually IP54 rated splash proof. So it'll do the job a bit better if you're in a very moist country like us here in the UK. As you can see, both smartphones also rock a rear-mounted fingerprint sensor as well, and it just falls naturally under your finger when you pick it up. And as you can see, they're just nice and responsive. Just give them a quick tap and you're basically straight into your desktops. Nice and straightforward. You do get a form of basic face recognition on these handsets as well. If you dive into the security section, you've got the smart lock, and inside of that you've got trusted face, but it's a bit crap to be honest, so I wouldn't even bother with that. Now, what about that display tech? Well, the Nokia 7 Plus sports a slightly bigger display than the 7.1. It's a 6-inch display compared with a 5.84 inch. And in both cases, they're IPS screens, and they're both full HD plus as well. So nice crisp visuals, as you can see there. The tiny little text are easily legible, and nice sharp icons and everything as well. It's perfect for watching a bit of Netflix, bit of YouTube. Weirdly, I have noticed that images do look a little bit sharper on the 7 Plus than they do on the 7.1. If you're getting really close, you can just see a little bit more sharp detail here on the 7 Plus. If you really dive into those petals, you can see they almost look a little bit fuzzy once you get up close here on the 7.1. And ditto here as well. If you look really close at some of the finer detailing on the pastry there, you'll see that you can just pick out a little bit more crisp detail here on the 7 Plus. As for the colour reproduction and everything though, there's very little difference between these two handsets. They both produce nice punchy colours, and if you dive on into the display settings, you'll see you've got the usual night light modes and all that kind of stuff as well. However, one bonus feature that the Nokia 7.1 has that the 7 Plus doesn't is this enhanced HDR10 display feature. And if you knock that on, you should then get a nice bit of upscaling for photos, games and videos to that sort of HDR, near HDR quality at least. And I have tried that both on and off for viewing the photos back, and it doesn't seem to make any difference to the crispness of the images I have downloaded onto the Nokia 7.1. Sadly, at the moment as well, the likes of Netflix, we don't seem to have that HDR support here on the Nokia 7.1. But hopefully it'll be certified and that will be available soon. As for the audio side of things, both have perfectly fine built-in speakers, so you can get a decent bit of punchy audio when you're just watching a bit of YouTube or something like that. And if you do want to plug in headphones as well, they're both fully Bluetooth support, and you do have that 3.5mm headphone jack as well, so you can get a nice wide connection. Now, both the Nokia 7 Plus and the 7.1 are Android One handsets. What that means is it just runs a nice clean vanilla version of Android in both of these phones. That means Nokia has done no tinkering whatsoever. You won't find any Nokia branded apps on this bad boy buried away in the apps tray. And if you go into settings, there'll be very little tinkering over standard Android as well. As you see, both of these handsets are still running Android Oreo 8.1, but they should be getting an update to Android Pie imminently, so stay tuned for that. And that should add the new Android Pie gesture control and a bunch of other new features. And the good thing about Android One handsets is they're guaranteed at least 2 Android version updates as well, so they should get an update to Android Q, whatever that ends up being. And also you're guaranteed regular security patches too to keep them nice and up to date. But yeah, in terms of the general software experience, absolutely no difference between them whatsoever. Performance, however, there is a difference. The older Nokia 7 Plus is running the Snapdragon 660, backed by the 4 or 6 gigs of RAM depending on your model. Here on the new Nokia 7.1, it's a Snapdragon 636, backed by the 3 or 4 gigs of RAM. Now what that means is the older Nokia 7 Plus is actually the more capable of the two devices. As you can see here, nice bit of Geekbench 4 action. Both the single core and the multi-score results are stronger here on the Nokia 7 Plus. Because both handsets you will see the occasional little stutter and stammer when you're sort of flicking through, loading up your apps. On the whole, as you can see there though, the Nokia 7 Plus is a little bit quicker. And of course, if you want to play the likes of PUBG, then you will have to dial down the detail levels in either of these phones. So the Nokia 7 Plus can just about handle PUBG on the balanced setting. If you dive into the graphics, there we go, we've got balanced and we've got high frame rate. Here on the Nokia 7.1, it defaulted to the smooth setting instead, and a bit of medium frame rate. I've already seen a couple of stutters and stammers when playing on the Nokia 7.1, just a single game, so I definitely say if you're going to be doing something like PUBG, you might want to steer clear, unfortunately, of this handset. The 7 Plus seems to hold up a bit finer. You will still, of course, see the odd judder and things like that, but on that sort of lower detail setting, the balanced, it can generally handle it. Of course, you will be at a disadvantage to anyone who's got a better handset. So if you're looking for a more affordable smartphone to do a bit of gaming on, we probably recommend an Honor handset such as the Honor Play instead. It's about the same sort of price, a little bit cheaper in fact. And because of the likes of the GPU Turbo Smarts, it actually runs a little bit smoother as well. As for the battery life, the Nokia 7 Plus again wins because it's a bigger blower. It's got a mighty 3,800 milliamp cell stashed away in there, so you can generally get between a day and a half and 2 days of use per charge. Definitely very impressive stuff. It's not quite as impressive here on the Nokia 7.1, unfortunately. You get a 3,000 milliamp cell in there, still does the job. You'll get a full day of use out of it, even with pretty heavy action, but it's definitely not quite as dependable as the Nokia 7 Plus. Thankfully, of course, you get the usual battery saver modes and everything on there, which is always handy. One weird little thing, however, on the Nokia 7 Plus, you don't have that battery percentage option, so you can't have it displayed up there. I'm guessing because of the notch there's not quite enough room for it, but that is pretty bloody annoying. And if you dive back into the settings, go to the storage, you'll see there's some difference there too. Here on the Nokia 7 Plus, it comes with 64 gigs as standard, whereas on the 7.1 you get choice of either 32 or 64 gigs. But in both cases you can slam in a micro SD memory card. I believe that the 7.1 has better support, it's up to 400 gigabyte cards, whereas on the Nokia 7 Plus it's 256 gig cards. And last but of course not least, what about that camera tech? Well, as you can see, both the 7.1 and the 7 Plus sport a dual lens rear snapper with a nice bit of Zeiss branding on it. Here on the older 7 Plus, it's actually slightly smarter camera tech. You get a 12 megapixel standard lens, a slightly wide angle, backed by a 13 megapixel optical zoom lens. It gives you a 2 times optical zoom to get closer to your subject. Whereas here on the 7.1, it's a 12 megapixel primary lens, backed by a 5 megapixel more basic depth sensor. So you don't get any of that telephoto lens optical zoom action, but you do still get the likes of portrait mode, things like that. Just jump on into the camera app and you'll see it's the same basic setup. As you can see there, you can sort of flip left and right to get to the various different modes, otherwise it's a bit quicker if you just tap what you want. All of the standard stuff is there, so you get a nice bit of live bokeh mode, which as I say, just snaps onto your subject, keeps them nice and sharp, and then blurs out the background for a very funky effect. And that happens in live action, as you can see, because of the name. So you can actually see the results before you take the picture. You also have full manual controls in the Pro mode as well, if you actually know what you're doing with a smartphone camera. In the standard photo mode, of course, you get a whole bunch of settings up top as well to play around with. So for instance, you've got Google Lens support, you've got support for a bit of the motion photos as well. That just shoots a brief snippet of video with every photo that you take. You of course have the AR mode, which just turns you into a weird bison-y thing, or a panda, or a up flower. And of course you've got your usual beauty shenanigans, and then this is just a bit of boathy mode action if you want to shoot a photo or a video using the front and the rear cameras at the same time. Dive on into the video modes, you've got standard video or you've got slow motion and time lapse on both of these Nokia handsets as well. And of course, you've also got the option to stream live to the likes of YouTube and Facebook. And here on the Nokia 7 Plus, you also have the surround sound audio as well, which is a nice bit of sort of 360-degree style audio as you're filming. So if you're viewing back with some headphones on, something like that support the surround sound, you get that sort of nice sort of stereo surround feedback. Sadly, you don't seem to get that on the Nokia 7.1, even though I'm reasonably sure they said that it was available on this handset at launch. If we dive on into the settings as well, you can see for the video, you can bump it all the way up to 4K resolution video on both of these phones, and both the Nokia 7.1 and the 7 Plus support, of course, for usual full HD, just at that 30 frames per second. There's no 60 frames per second option. And if we swap around to the front-facing cameras, again, the Nokia 7 Plus is the winner in terms of the general hardware. It's got a 16 megapixel front-facing lens, f2.0, whereas on the Nokia 7.1 has been scaled back to an 8 megapixel. But of course, both should be absolutely fine for your sexy selfies. Lovely stuff. And I've got the night mode activated here on the 7 Plus. You do get a form of screen flash here on the 7.1 as well to light up your mug for those gorgeous nightclub shots. And that in a nutshell is the Nokia 7 Plus versus the 7.1. As you can see, the 7.1 definitely sports the neater design. You've got that really front-filling display with really narrow bezels and everything as well. And of course, you've got that HDR-ready screen as well, which hopefully will be supported by the likes of Netflix soon and can upscale your SDR content to near HDR level. However, that said, the Nokia 7 Plus sports the better performance, the bigger battery, and all-round better specs, even though you don't get that HDR mode. And also, weirdly, the screen does seem sharper when viewing back images as well. Maybe that's some sort of little issue that's going to be corrected in a software update on the 7.1, because of course it is once again a full HD plus resolution. So definitely let us know what you think in the comments below. Which one are you more tempted by, the older Nokia 7 Plus or a 7.1 with its gorgeous new redesign? It'll be great to hear your thoughts, and of course don't forget to hit subscribe for more on our latest and greatest mobile tech. Cheers guys, love you!